Hello again, Unificationists. How are you doing? Here we come again with this super important message. The former video was about the concubines lineage part 1. This video will be about the second part of the concubines lineage. And we are going to solve questions like, if true father had a wife and concubines, did Jesus Christ too? And did true father have a lineage of concubines and illegitimate children like Jesus Christ? Let's find out. But before we start, don't forget the 7 conditions I mentioned in the introductory video from the previous workshop, the final showdown between Satan and God. Below is the link. Concubines lineage, part 2. If true father had a wife and concubines, did Jesus Christ too? Let's find out. True father, open quote. Jesus' death was due to a woman's failure. The facts indicate this. Mary failed to fulfill her mission, which was to find a bride for Jesus. If only Mary had accomplished her mission, things would have been different. She should have dedicated herself to Jesus totally, even just for 3 years from the time of his conception, and not worry about Joseph, even if he should die. Thus, first, woman could not accomplish her responsibility as a mother, second, as a bride, and third, as a servant. Woman could not accomplish these 3 responsibilities. Why did Jesus speak with a woman from Samaria? Jesus put her in a position of a servant and spoke with her, having lost his mother and not found his bride. Jesus went to a servant to ask for water. This servant was not able to fulfill her responsibility either. The Samaritan woman was a very low person, like a worn-out rag, even among the servants. However, what if she had heard Jesus' words, found life, and followed him? What would she be like? She could have been greater than Mary Magdalene. Everyone, have you thought about it? Had she done so, the Samaritan woman would have been in a greater position than Martha and Mary. From this point of view, Jesus' death is due to a woman. Woman should be mother, daughter, and servant, 3 stages. From the viewpoint of fallen Adam, Adam's wife is a servant. Eve fell and became a servant. Jesus was born through such a servant's body. Fathers say that, you can find that in The Weight of Unification, Part 2, Chapter 7, Section 4, Part 1, 2.2. And I'll read again the main part. Why did Jesus speak with a woman from Samaria? Jesus put her in a position of a servant and spoke with her, having lost his mother and not found his bride. Jesus went to a servant to ask for water. Had she done so, the Samaritan woman would have been in a greater position than Martha and Mary. From the viewpoint of fallen Adam, Adam's wife is a servant. Eve fell and became a servant. Jesus was born through such a servant's body. Open quote. Jesus put her in a position of a servant and spoke with her. Close quote. That means, first of all, if Adam and Eve hadn't fallen, Eve wouldn't be in the position of a servant. Therefore, Adam's wife, or the Messiah's wife, is a servant on God's side, like Mary. You can find this in Luke chapter 1, verse 38, until she is restored. Open quote. Jesus went to a servant to ask for water. That Jesus Christ asked the Samaritan woman for water, John 4:7, means that she was fertile. Ezekiel 17:8. Ezekiel 17:8, and that, in other words, Jesus Christ intended to bring offspring through her, and that's why True Father said, open quote, the Samaritan woman will have been in a close quote. True Father, open quote, those who supported Jesus during his lifetime were Gentiles. The Samaritan woman was a Gentile too. Jesus had to reveal his heart not to legitimate but illegitimate children. Why did he talk to the Samaritan woman about the water of life? He talked about the heavenly kingdom of love. Those were such important words that should be taught to people eternally. Yet he couldn't explain the entire contents pertaining to lineage. Thus he had to choose whomever he could start a family with, having to start the providence of the bride with a prostitute, which however failed. The position of the bride in a family and the position of the church and the right of the chosen people of Israel failed. So when Jesus was resurrected 3 days after his death, when Mary Magdalene tried to touch him, he told her not to. He was all alone even at the time of his final parting. You cannot deny this fact if you read the Bible. Father said in a hondoke in his garden on May 22, 2003. And I read again the main part. Open quote. Jesus had to reveal his heart not to legitimate but illegitimate children. Why did he talk to the Samaritan woman about the water of life? He talked about the heavenly kingdom of love. Those were such important words that should be taught to people eternally. Yet he couldn't explain the entire contents pertaining to lineage. Thus he had to choose whomever he could start a family with, having to start the providence of the bride with a prostitute, referring to the Samaritan woman, which however failed. So when Jesus was resurrected 3 days after his death, when Mary Magdalene tried to touch him, he told her not to. Open quote. Jesus had to reveal his heart not to legitimate but illegitimate children. Close quote. In Wikipedia we can find this. Legitimacy in traditional Western common law is the status of a child born to parents who are legally married to each other, and of a child conceived before the parents obtain a legal divorce. Conversely, illegitimacy or bastardy has been the status of a child born outside marriage, such a child being known as a bastard, a lost child, or illegitimate, when such a child has been differentiated from other children. You can find this in Wikipedia, Legitimacy, Family Law. This proves that Jesus Christ had children within a marriage and children outside of a marriage. Open quote. When Mary Magdalene tried to touch him, he told her not to. Close quote. You can find this in John 20:17. The meaning of not to touching is related to forbidden sexual love. See the verses Genesis 3:3, Genesis 26, Ruth 2:9, or 2 Samuel 14:10. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, King James Version, it reads, Now it came to pass as they went that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house, and she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was cumbered about serving, and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Before interpreting the whole passage, let's find out the meaning of the feet. Open quote. Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet. Close quote. When in the Bible there is an action of a woman with the feet of a man, it refers to an intimate relationship or conjugal love. See the verses. 1 Samuel chapter 25 verses 40 to 42, or Ruth chapter 3 verse 4. Another important point that I must clarify before beginning to interpret is that is that the little I read of the book of the six Marys mentioned that Martha was younger than Mary. If Mr. Park heard it from true father, then this is how it is and no more to say. But if not, I think the opposite is true, that Martha is older than Mary. Because this part says, Martha, open quote, Martha received him into her house, close quote. And in the verse John 11, chapter 11, verse 5, Martha is mentioned first, then her two siblings, Mary and Lazarus, and Mary and Lazarus. And Jewish people like Koreans are very traditional. Considering that Martha was older than Mary, and according to the verse John chapter 11 verse 5, that Jesus Christ loved them, it means that the two were in a position to restore Jacob's two wives, Leah and Rachel, who were themselves sisters. If we read this part of the passage, open quote, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister had left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me, close quote. We can see that Martha was jealous of Mary, and then Jesus Christ responded like this, open quote, but one thing is needful, and Mary had chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her, close quote, which is indicating that Mary has the position of Rachel. And we know that Rachel was Jacob's favorite wife. You can find this in Genesis chapter 29 verse 20. And this part that says, open quote, but Martha was cumbered about much serving, close quote, is indicating the process of restoration, which the older sister should serve the younger sister. True Father even mentioned a few times that she even has to prepare the bed for the wedding night. So okay, let's read. In the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, King James Version. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Note that when the number 6 is mentioned in the Bible and in a period of time such as hour, day, week, month, year, etc., and then describes the interaction between a man and a woman, is because they are considered an important figure in God's providence. And from this relationship, the legitimate child or children of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene were born. In the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verses 11 to 18, King James Version, it reads, But Mary stood without at the sepulchre, weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head, and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She said unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself back, and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. Jesus said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, said unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus said unto her, Mary. She turned herself and said unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Jesus said unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things unto her. Knowing what touch me not means in the Bible, let's proceed to interpret this part of the passage. Open quote. For I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Close quote. This means that Jesus Christ came to form a God-centered family, and not an ordinary family of parents with children, and to build an ideal family. First vertical love is established, and then horizontal love. That is why Jesus Christ said, open quote, I am not yet ascended to my Father, close quote. In the following word, it is the opposite, and that's why there is so much chaos. Once Jesus Christ passed away physically, he completely missed the opportunity to raise an ideal family, and that's why True Father said, open quote, he was all alone, even at the time of his final parting, close quote. True Father also had a very similar situation when he went to North Korea to meet with Kim Il-sung. When he met his relatives, he told them, True Father, open quote, please, I said, don't do this. It's important for me to meet my family, but I came to do God's work. Please don't do this. Get hold of yourselves. Close quote. Father said in his autobiography. A piece of advice to establish vertical love first and then horizontal love is, let's just focus on achieving the public purpose. That God will take care of achieving the individual purpose for each one of us. Don't worry. Okay, let's continue. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verses 37 to 38, King James Version, and behold, a woman in the city which was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. You can compare this with Hosea, with the book of with the passage of Hosea, chapter 1, verse 2. Hosea. Anyway, let's continue. Many consider this woman to be Mary Magdalene herself. But if you realize Jesus Christ was in the Pharisees' house with people who didn't know him, you can find this in the book of Luke. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verse 49. Instead, with Mary Magdalene were her siblings and the apostles, and this woman had the position of Jesus Christ's concubine. Instead, Mary Magdalene was in the position of first wife. Finally, there is the Samaritan woman, and I have a surprise for you regarding her, which I will reveal to you later. For now, we are going to find out what position she had in front of Jesus Christ. In the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verse 18, King James Version, it reads, For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidst thou truly. Sorry for my pronunciation. Okay, let's continue. This is when Jesus Christ was talking to the Samaritan woman, and the part when he said, open quote, and the one whom you now have is now your husband, close quote. He was referring to himself, and this means that in front of Jesus Christ she didn't have the position of a wife, but of a concubine. Returning to the original question, if True Father had a wife and concubines, did Jesus Christ too? Yes, the 4 women mentioned and related to Jesus Christ are related to Jesus Christ, represented the 2 wives and the 2 concubines of Jacob. I'm going to repeat that. Returning to the original question, if True Father had a wife and concubines, Did Jesus Christ too? Yes, the 4 women mentioned and related to Jesus Christ represented the 2 wives and the 2 concubines of Jacob. Yeah. The next question is, if Jesus Christ had a lineage of concubines and illegitimate children from Abraham's family to his family, did true father also have? Let's find out. Like everything in life goes through a period of 3 stages: formation, growth, and completion. Also, true father's lineage and the preparation of the Korean people were established in 3 stages. Formation. In the book of Genesis, chapter 25, verse 6, King James Version, it reads, "But unto the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts and sent them away from Isaac his son, while he yet lived, eastward unto the east country." Close quote. Since we can see that this biblical passage did not point to a specific place in the east, and since we are talking about 4,000 years of biblical history, then the family could have spread to all corners of Asia. It seems not unreasonable to think that all Eastern religions originated in that family, that the Chinese characters resembled passages from the Bible, or that the second coming prophecies point to the east. Another important point of this Bible passage is the part that says, open quote, "the sons of the concubines," close quote, to go answering the previous question. Growth. Next, I'm going to read the description of a documentary that I took from a YouTube channel called Jinjialon TV, yeah, with its characters in Korean alphabet. The description was also in Korean, and what I did was copy and paste into the Google Translate, and this is what I got. Excuse me if you find errors in the translation. I don't speak Korean, and English is my second language. The Korean people are Israeli people. 3,000 years ago, the secret of the ancient Hebrew letter wadang kiwa was unlocked. Dr. Yu Chun-yu claims in his book World Revolution, it is possible that Koreans are one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Professor Ed Greenstein, as one of the few experts on ancient Hebrew, said that Wadang's writing must have been used in the 8th, 6th century before Christ. Since Hebrew has been transformed 18 times, it is said that few scholars can accurately interpret it. A book was discovered by the late Dr. Yu Chun, a famous criminal law scholar, claiming that our nation may be an Israel nation. Dr. Yu, a devout Christian, argued in the World Revolution published by Ji Haksa Company Limited on December 18, 2014, that Korea is a very mysterious country in the sense that Koreans may be one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Listed are 29 examples of the broader commonalities between the culture and language. Some of the most important of these are as follows. Number 1, the word Abba is in North Korean and Hebrew, and its exact meaning is daddy rather than father. Mark, you can find Mark in the gospel. You can find this in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14, verse 36, or in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 15, or Galatians, chapter 4, verse 6. Number 2, sackcloth was worn to mourn the death of the family, and so was the Israeli culture. Isaiah chapter 22, verse 12, or in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, verses 34 to 35. 3. Stamps made of lead or similar material to mark the official signature are common to Korea and Israeli cultures. Genesis 38:18. 4. As can be seen from the expression of the white people, the white clothes often worn in Korean mean purity and are worn at funerals. Ecclesiastes, you can find that in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verse 8. Or in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 5 and verse 18, or chapter 4, verse 4. 5. Professional paid matchmakers are common to both Koreans and Jews. 6. In Korea and traditional Jewish culture, a kiln was used to take the groom to the bride's house. 7. In both countries, women use veils, towel in Korean. 8. After the death of a loved one, the 7-day period of mourning, Hebrew is Shiva, is practiced in Hebrew and Korean culture. 9. In both traditional Jewish and Korean culture, shoes are taken off at home. 10. Both Koreans and Jews have a strong interest in education. In addition, Koreans and Israelis use mats to carry grain, bronze plates, national Thanksgiving days such as Chuseok. Fathers and sons never had the same name, and wigs were commonly used by women. It is said that they have points in common. Dr. Yu wrote The World Revolution in English and translated by his successor, Professor San-pil, and Department of Law at Hangik University. Conclusive evidence that the Korean people are Israeli descendants. Hebrew patterns in the wadang excavated along the banks of the Dedon River. Wadang is written on the meaning of arrival, and the ancient Hebrew word written on the pattern is written in the lower part. It can be matched with the Hebrew letter table in the head. Among the 12 tribes in the Bible's Judges, it was not a historian but a savior, Cho Hee-son, who was the first to reveal that the disappeared Dandan faction was the Korean people. During a sermon in 1981, Mr. Jo Hee-son said, open quote, "If you go to the museum, there is a roof tile excavated from Dedon River and there is a Hebrew script written on it. Go to and find out what is written there." Close quote. Dr. Shin-hun said in Hebrew, "Arrive, the saints gather and are restored through prayer." Close quote. Let's enter the kingdom of God in cooperation with Yobhwa. On the other hand, the victory altar did not stop at the interpretation of Dr. Shin-hun as above, but continued to try to prove this fact internationally through authoritative Israeli scholars or research institutes. Then, on March 14, 2008, Vice Chairman Han Kang-hyung of Archaeology of Human Culture met Professor Ed Greenstein, an ancient Bible Hebrew expert at Bar Ilan University of Israel. Confirmed that it is Hebrew. Professor Greenstein confirmed that it's Hebrew. Professor Greenstein, one of the few experts on ancient Hebrew, showed the letter map. The shape of the letter changed according to the times, and said that the wadang letter was certainly used in the 8th, 6th century before Christ. Origin of Dandan group. Israeli ambassador Uji Manor, he said that Korea looks a lot like Israel. I've heard of this. Israel was made up of 12 tribes during the ancient kingdom. Later it was invaded by immigrants and scattered in Europe, Asia, and Africa. But it's a mystery where only one tribe has moved so far, the last name of the lost tribe. Lost tribe is Dan, but wasn't Dangun the founder of Gojeonson? Is it Fan? Okay, for those who speak Korean, can watch the video. The link is below. Yeah, you will understand. Okay, we can stop here and then we can continue in the next video.